My name is Dana Valdez Maestas. I'm a mother of 4 children and a grandmother of 3 children. I've been married for nearly 42 years. I own my own business, Hakala's Fine Art, and am co-owner of Alberto Sculpture Studio. My husband's a sculptor in the community. I'm a sixth generation resident of San Luis. My family, my mother's family on the Martinez side, is there's one of the first ancestors that came up in this community, Juan Gregorio Martin to La Valle. He is one of the first founding families of the community of San Luis. That makes my grandchildren descendants of one of the first founders of the community. On my grandfather's, on my dad's side, on my grandfather's side, in their Valdez and Villalpandos, and their families came up from Abiquiu, New Mexico, up into San Luis and settled in the Chama area, in Cañon de Chama. My dad was born in a little house up in Cañon, and so were his siblings. I'm the oldest of 6 children. Both my parents were educators. My dad was a principal and my mom was a school teacher. I think one of the things that I enjoy living in San Luis is nature. I love being out in nature. I love the clear blue skies. Even in the winter when it snows, we always get clear, beautiful skies and crisp air that you can smell just the pines, and you can smell just the freshness and see the beautiful clear azure skies, and it's just magnificent. It's being part of heaven when you live in this valley. There's times when I've been away from my community. We lived in Colorado Springs for 10 years and moved back to the community so my husband could work on an art project, which is the Stations of the Cross Shrine. And then other times we'll be gone because we travel a lot with our business, and we'll be driving back over the pass and coming into the valley, and we see the sunset and just the chamizos, the sagebrush for miles. And we're driving slowly into a little sunken valley, and you could see lights far in the distance. And you just, sometimes you look at the mountains and you see just the majesty of what they look like. And it just makes you realize that when you're coming home, you're coming to a place that's home, and you feel safe here and welcomed and secure, and you just realize how beautiful it is. And so I'm very proud and happy to be part of this community. We raised our children here. They've gone off and been very successful, and it just makes me happy to know that I was here for my mom when she got ill, and I needed our help, and just how special, and maybe because of our religious Catholic upbringing, to have that morality and that sense of community and that sense of family, that 2 of my brothers actually were single and moved back home to help care for our parents. And families don't do that anymore, and I really admire them. La Sierra has played an important role for our family. My immediate family would be that we would go up for wood. my dad had cattle, and we would use the farm ranch down the hill from La Sierra, which is a Dos Hermanos ranch, more than we would the Taylor Ranch too. But we always went up there for wood. What we remember more so is we'd go up there to go fishing and camping there to a place called Petramalas. And there was an area where there was some cabins, and there was an old mill, a water mill there. And we would go play in the water mill, and we'd always just go camping there. My dad would take a pack with horses, and I didn't really go ride horses, but my brothers did. And they would go hunting, and we'd kind of hang out by the cabin area, and they would ride up more to the ridge, and they would go hunting or just go ride their horses up there, their little pack. I do remember my father going with friends, and they would go hunting. Lots of times they would go up through the Dos Hermanos side and then cross over the ridge into the La Sierra Taylor Ranch area and go hunting up there. We have wonderful photos of the kids and my family just up there, up on the hill, up on the mountain, and we could see the ridge on the other side into Huerfano County. My husband has gone up to, with some friends, fishing up to the lake up there and up to Culebra Peak. And so he has stories about the clear blue lake up there. I myself have never really been up there personally, but I know stories that he tells us that his family and grandfather and mom, they would go up there all the time because they had hundreds of sheep, like 500 sheep, and they didn't have cattle, but they would go graze their sheep up on La Sierra. And they would camp out near those cabins, and that's where they lived for a very long time. His grandfather would dig a hole in the ground, and they had a big comal, which is like a big metal pot, cast iron pot, and he would cook beans in there, and they would get the meat, and they would wrap it up in gunny sacks, or I don't know, they'd light a fire on the bottom and they would cook the meat and kind of layering in this big hole, and he'd make fresh tortillas, and by the time everyone came down from the hill, or they would take turns coming down for lunch, and he'd have lunch ready while they were grazing their sheep. So that was kind of a special thing that was really important to them. I think La Sierra, for so many people in the community, is a part of who we are as a people, because it is very unique land grant. Access to La Sierra was very critical for the survival of our ancestors, and because of the mountain provided a livelihood for them to survive. When Carlos Vivian originally gave the Vara strips to the settlers, which were about 115 pobladores, which pobladores is Spanish for settlers, they came in the community and they were given uplands, they were given grazeland, they were given area where the acequias ran through for irrigation. They were given grassland, and those settlers used that land to have access pretty much for everything they needed. If they needed water, if they needed to go hunting for the water for the acequias to irrigate, or maybe for fishing, they had access for meat and to hunt, and their mountainous areas for timber and for getting firewood. And so part of those communal rights that the community has been fighting for are those same rights that were the original rights that were given to our ancestors. And I think because of the way that was formulated, that's how they survived. They came up here with very little money. Obviously, they were poor. Most of them were farmers. What they did was to survive was to go up to the mountains and hunt for their meat, for food, to put food on their table, to fish, to put food on their table. Fishing was also a recreational component of what they did. They went up to picnic, to play. They went up also for firewood to heat their homes, which was a very mainstay back then, and also now there's a lot of people in the community heat their homes with firewood and have not so much a fireplace, but wood stoves that they've built themselves or purchased, but they heat their homes with wood stoves. A lot of the homes in this community have been built by timber from the mountain, and a lot of homes are built with vigas, which are big, large logs that go across a roof to support the roof. And then the latillas are the smaller logs or smaller poles that go the opposite end between the vigas, and those smaller logs actually help support the roof system also. What they used to do back in the day was to, instead of any type of insulation like they have fiberglass now, they would, with hay and grass or straw and dirt, they would compact the top of the roof, and they would put that on top of the vigas, and so that would be your roof system or ceiling system. The women back in before would put what they call manteles, and which are large sheets or cloth, and they would hang them over on top of the ceiling, because every time somebody would come in or slam the door or just general wear and tear, the dirt would slowly and the dust would slowly fall down, and instead of dirtying your home, the dust would fall inside those sheets, and they would take them down every once in a while and shake them off and clean them up and put them back up again, and that would be their ceiling. So people in this community have used the resources from that mountain for a very long time. They use the mud to build adobes, and there's a lot of homes in this community that are still built by adobes and are still being built by adobe, and the latillas and the timber to build porches, because I know there's a gentleman here in the community that has these really beautiful logs, and we actually asked him where he had got them, and he said he had got them up from La Sierra. The resources that come from La Sierra today are a critical component of the survival in this community, because the community itself is a land and water community, an agricultural community. The watershed, which I would think was the most important component of La Sierra, is the Culebra watershed. The upper Culebra watershed actually sustains over 200 farmers and ranchers in the Rio Culebra basin, and the lower Culebra watershed, which includes all the 7 or 8 villages within the community, including down east into San Nicasio. And that watershed also sustains 76 acequias within the Rio Culebra basin and 700 irrigators within that basin. So that Culebra watershed is a very critical component to La Sierra because it sustains the livelihood of a lot of the farmers and ranchers in this community, whether they have small home gardens or they irrigate their crops, which a lot of that is hay for their cattle. A lot of farmers in this community have cattle. A lot of them have sheep. And right now, in this day and age, they have hay. I mean, not just hay, but they have hemp. It's more than anything, it's the water that's very critical to this community. I know there's bumper stickers out there that say, "Without water, there is no life. Sin agua no hay vida." And that's very true because not just in this community, but in the planet, we need to make sure that our water is protected and here for a very long time, because that's what sustains our livelihood. I remember as I got older hearing about the Taylor Ranch Wars, that's what they called it. And I think when there was a beating of 3 men in the community, and Taylor brought these men down to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff actually ended up arresting Taylor. And I know there was lots of men that gathered in the community in front of Romero's grocery store, in front of the courthouse, and they were waiting to see what the judge's decision was on if they were even going to press charges against this man. I have no recollection personally of any of that, but I remember hearing the stories about that, and I know that I think that was the beginning of the Taylor Ranch Wars, because I think I heard of people getting shot at by Taylor himself, or people getting shot at by his foreman. My husband specifically has a story that he was up there with a couple of friends, and they were gone up to check on some cattle, and they got shot at. But me personally, I don't have any recollection specifically of that time period. When I was growing up, my dad was very educated, and he also felt, like other people in the community, felt like there was these Chicanos and these other radicals coming in and making a big issue about the mountain. And yet he went up there for wood. He went up there to hunt, and it was just a way of life. He didn't really think anything different. But I know one of the very first meetings they had in June of 1978. My daughter was 3 months old, and my husband and I actually attended the conference that they had. And there was Native Americans there. There was the 2 original farmers that I consider starting the land rights movement, was Apollinaire Rail and Juan Lacombe. And they were there, and we were all in a big circle, and they did these prayers, and there was speeches about the mountain and about Mr. Taylor, and it was a very communal time, and a time that I think the community actually came together, and it was just something that I always remember. But I just think that at the time, my father was like, okay, where are you guys going? What are you doing there? We have no business there, because it's not, but that was just his own personal take on it. But there was several other people in the community who were definitely a part of that movement, and I was glad that I was there. And then we moved away and didn't really keep track of what was going on with the Land Rights Council when in 2007 I was employed with them part-time for a couple of years, and it gave me, I was filing information that they had, and I was reading up on the court case and reading up on how the Land Rights Council began and their purpose for being. And it gave me a deep appreciation and understanding for what their purpose was, because it was a Spanish Mexican land grant that was given to our settlers and to the people of this community. And we did have rights, or we do have rights to that mountain. And I think they need to be honored and they need to be respected. And I think our children need to understand that those rights can still be passed on to them. For our community, I think it's really critical that there is a management plan set in place for La Sierra. I know the LRC has worked on a management plan for several years, and there's Herideros Grazing Association, which is herideros are the people that go up to graze their animals. They're basically, the sheep herders, and they've all spoke of creating a management plan, because I think there's areas of the mountain that have been overgrazed, and there needs to be some sort of a way for animals to be able to graze without damaging the land, whether they are moved in sections or fenced off in sections and then moved on to another area. And so there has to be a way for the community to come together and create that management plan for La Sierra, because that is what the whole your communal rights is all about. You're allowed at this point to go up and use the mountain for grazing, to take your animals, to go up for firewood and timber. And I think with everyone being good stewards of the land, then that's a way to protect our own water and our own livelihood. One thing that the Castilla County Conservancy District is working on now is a Upper Culebra watershed assessment plan. And we had several stakeholder meetings with people in the community. We included Sangre Cristo Sequia Association, the county commissioners, the National Resources Management Group, the NRCS, the San Luis Water and Sanitation, the town of San Luis, the Castilla County Fire Protection District. We've included the Rio Grande Restoration Foundation, and because there's Colorado Open Lands has been a big component of supporting the water assessment project. Right now, we're working with William Harrison, who is the new owner of La Sierra, and he's very amicable to working with us, because he knows that being able to protect that land is in his best interest, and it's also in our best interest. The one thing that's very critical is fire mitigation, because there was a spring fire up by the northern end of what was originally the Sangre Cristo land grant, which is up in Forbes Trinchera area in the northern part of Costilla County. And because of that fire, which devastated thousands of acres, over 150 homes went over La Vida Pass into Huerfano County up by La Vida. That fire was very detrimental to the community and to a lot of the people that lost their homes, and so that if a fire occurred here, it would definitely damage that watershed and damage the livelihood of what people rely on. And so we are working, part of the assessment plan is to look at grazing, the uplands, to look at geology, riparian habitat, aquatic habitat, fire mitigation, emergency management. The whole assessment plan is focused on looking at a lot of issues that are very critical to the survival of that mountain and the health of that mountain, because the health of that mountain means the health of our community. Education is the best way to reach young people. I think talking to them, hearing our stories, and hearing the stories of their elders and their grandparents. And I know this only because I remember stories that my parents told me and never really wrote them down, and now they're gone and I don't always remember what they are. My brother will tell me things and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember that now. But I think it's good for those stories to be passed on, for those oral histories to be passed on, because that's how people remember who they are, and being able to keep that language. We're very unique in having a Castilian language in this community. That's just unique to southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. Also, just a lot of the cultural traditions that we have are very unique to this area. And we live those traditions and that culture every day without really giving it a second thought. But, and I think in many ways our children have grown up with those traditions, with them really thinking that it's a cultural tradition. It's just something that they do and they live, and they're living that culture and that history right now. But I think they don't maybe realize that that's something unique, specific to them. And then they graduate and they move on because there are no jobs in the community, and I think they hold on to that tradition, but sometimes they move on and don't really think about it because they know that their grandfather went hunting, and I know there's hunters all over the United States, but I think for us it's more, we were traditional hunters, not hunting for sport. It was more a way of life and hunting for food and a way to sustain our livelihood, and being able to pass that culture and those traditions on. I think maybe we need to, one thing I've thought of is doing a curriculum to teach kids, because they're younger and they don't remember the same. Their parents are our children, and those traditions, they don't hold steadfast like we did before. And people talk about how this community was lively and there was businesses and things going on every weekend, and that's changed. And there used to be hundreds of kids in the school, and now there's 100 kids K through 12. So the community has just changed in so many ways. But I think maybe the way is just to continue those stories and to educate them and for them to realize that they have a very unique history and culture here. And that's something that they need to cherish and respect and honor. And that's the one thing that I think in this community that's very special, because they do honor the land, they do honor the water, they do honor family, and it's just part of who we are.